How you doing there? Welcome back to Babble on Talmud. Today we're starting Daf Peches, Daf 88 of Masechta Chullin. Friends, Daf Peches, I'm not anticipating a long daf over here. I'm anticipating a pretty smooth ride. We're going to wrap up the Mishnah that we learned yesterday. With the blood that spritzes and the blood on the knife and stuff. So we're going to wrap that up in terms of which blood needs to be covered. And then we will learn a new Mishnah of what to use for covering, what materials to use for Kisui Adam. That's basically the daf. I think it should be interesting. I think it should be smooth sailing. So I guess we'll find out. Come join me. Let's have a great time learning Daf Peches, Daf 88 of Masechta Chullin. All right, friends, we begin on Daf Peches, Amid Aleph, at the two dots, about 10 lines into Daf Peches Amid Aleph. Domanitos v'shal hasakin v'chule. The Mishnah had said that blood that spritzes away and blood that is on the knife after you shecht, this blood must be covered. Now, we had seen in the Mishnah that Rabbi Yehuda had qualified that, saying that that is only if there was no other if there was no other blood that you could have covered, and this is all you got, so cover it. But let's see what the Gemara says. You have to cover the blood. That teaches that even the blood that spritzes away and the blood that is on the knife also must be Kisui Hadam, must be covered. Rabbi Yehuda says, Rabbi Yehuda, wait a second, when is that? Bizman she'ein sham dam elahu, when there is no other blood that could be covered. All that you have is some blood that's on the knife or that spritzed away. So then cover that. Aval, yesham dam shelo, but if there's other blood to cover, so you can cover that other blood, that's fine, potter. Milchasas, you don't need to cover the blood that's on the knife or whatever. Tanya Idach, Nacha Braisa, another Braisa, V'chiso, when it says to cover it, Melamed Shekol Domo Chayv L'chasos, teaches that all of the blood, the entirety of the blood here, blood there, all blood must be covered. Mikan Amu Domanitos V'shala Kapayim Chayv L'chasos. From here they said that even blood that spritzes away and blood that's on the walls of the Beis HaShrita, of the neck, that also must be covered. Wait, when is that so? According to Shimon Gamliel, the main thing is that the dama nefesh, the main flow of blood after shchita, that needs to be covered. Now, if part of that main flow of blood spritzed away, so then you gotta cover that blood that spritzed away. If none of the main blood spritzed away and all of it just kind of landed on the floor or whatever, and you cover that up, and then some random other blood spritzed away, then you could leave it alone. The main thing is the dama nefesh, that main flow of blood. So again, when do you have to get every last spritz? Shelo kisa dama nefesh. If you didn't cover all of the dama nefesh, all of the main blood, and some of it got away, so you have to cover the getaway. Aval kisa dama nefesh. But if you covered all of the dama nefesh, all of the main flow of blood, Potter milchasas, you don't have to cover anything else. But what is this three-way machlokes all about? Rabbanan Sabi, the rabbis hold damo, kol damo. When it says its blood, all of its blood, even blood that spritzes here, blood that spritzes there, blood that spritzes everywhere, blood that's on the knife, blood that's on the what rhymes with knife? So you have to cover all of the blood according to the Chachamim. Reb Yehuda holds damo v'afilu miktzas damo. When it says damo, even some of the blood is sufficient. That, right, as Reb Yehuda said, look, when do you have to worry about the blood on the knife or blood that gets away if there's no other blood that can be covered? As long as there's other blood that can be covered, cover that other blood and that's fine. It doesn't matter whether it's dama nefesh or whatever. It doesn't matter. As long as there's some blood that can be covered, that is enough according to Rabbi Yehuda. And I think Lemaisa, that's how we paskin. I think we don't get too fussed about like how much blood is covered. I think Lemaisa, you basically Kisu Adam, a little bit of blood needs to be covered, and I think your Yetz is on. Reb Shimon Gamliel Savar Damu Amiyuchad. Whereas Reb Shimon Gamliel says it needs to be special blood, the dama nefesh. The dama nefesh needs to be covered. After that, otherwise, you don't need to cover any other spritzes of blood. But the dama nefesh, the core life blood, does need to be covered according to Reb Shimon ben Gamliel. So again, according to the Chachamim, all blood. According to Reb Yehuda, even just some. According to Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, all of the life blood. All right, friends, and now we get up to a new Mishnah where we are going to discuss what can be used to do Kisui Adam. Says the Mishnah, Bome Michasin uvamo ein Michasin. What do we cover with? What don't we cover with? Michasin, what do we cover with? Bezevel adak. In addition to, of course, just using dirt, you can use finely dunged dung. Uvachol adak, or fine sand. Basid uvacharsis, lime and pottery. Uvalevena uvamagufa shekachon, bricks, or like a mud sealant of a jug, of like an earthenware vessel, and you seal it. Magufa sachavis, with like, I think magufa sachavis is like a mud seal. Shekachon, that you've ground them up, the brick or the mud seal, you ground it up into like a powder. Aval, yeah, like a dirt kind of thing. Aval, ein mechasin, but what you cannot cover with is lo bezevel agas, not chunky dung, v'lo bechol agas, or chunky sand, v'lo ba levena uvamagufa shelo kachon, or not with bricks and mud seals that have not been finely cut up. Not coarse stuff. You don't want to cover with coarse stuff. You want to cover with fine stuff. And don't just take a vessel and, don't take like a plate and, you got blood on the floor. Just take like a plate or something and just put it on top of the blood. Right? It's covered now. That doesn't work. Because I could think that it would work, right? Kisui Adam. If you just need to cover the blood, okay, so there's some blood on the floor, take some kind of a plate or something, put it on top of the blood. You can't see it anymore. It's covered. No, you need to do it with dirt or any of the items listed in the Mishnah. Klal Reb Shimon Gamliel, that Reb Shimon Gamliel said as a general rule, davar shemegadol bo tzmachim, anything that plants can grow in, mechasin bo, you can use for Kisui Adam. V'she'eno megadol tzmachim, however, any materials that won't grow plants, ein mechasin bo, well then refrain from using those items, those materials for Kisui Hadam. Okay, says the Gemara. What is considered fine sand? Amar Rabba by Chana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Kol she'ein hayotzer tzarich likatsho. Fine sand is any sand that a craftsman does not need to break up any further. Vika damasni lo asefa. Those who say that Rabbi Baruch Yochanan and Rabbi Yochanan is going on the seifa of the Mishnah, aval ein mechasin lo bezevel agas v'lo bechol hagas, that the seifa of the Mishnah talks about that we don't use coarse sand. Heichi dami chol hagas, what's coarse sand? It's considered coarse if it needs to be broken down further. My benai, what's the nafkamina? Whether we say that it's going on the ratio or the seifa, the nafkamina is the difference is if you have sand that does need to be further broken up, but also not. How could that be that it needs to be further broken down, but also not? Well, if you could break it with your hands, right? So on the one hand, it does need to be further broken down, but on the other hand, you could just use your hand to do it. It doesn't require, it's pretty much broken. It's clumped a little bit, but it's pretty much broken up. You could just use your hand to break it up. So that status of sand could be classified in either way, in either group. It could be classified as further needing to be broken down, because it does, but it could also be classified as being already broken down because it really doesn't, it takes minimal effort to actually break it down. So if we're going based on the first definition, that what's fine sand? Fine sand is sand that the craftsman does not need to break down further. And if we say that this kind of clumped sand because you could just break it up with your hand, it could be considered like it doesn't need to be broken up further, that we would say it is fine sand. But if we had the later definition that it's going on the coarse sand, that what's coarse sand? Sand that the craftsman does need to break further up, break down further. So we said that this clumped sand can also fit into that categorization as well, because it does in fact need to be broken down further, even though it's easy, and therefore we would consider it to be coarse sand. So, okay, fine. Givaldi. Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, v'chiso, cover it. If it just means to cover the blood, to cover it, let me take a plate and I'll cover the blood. You can't see it anymore. Covered. Done. V'chiso, it's covered. Tamlo be'offer. That's why we need, and we're going to see this, we're going to get to the kneading part in a few minutes, but that's why we need be'offer. If I didn't have be'offer, I could totally bark down the wrong tree. I might think all I need to do is take a plate, put it on top of the blood, can't see it, it's covered. Literally cover the blood with like a lid. So therefore, tamalom be'offer. No. You don't just take like a plate and cover the blood. You need dirt. Vein the ella offer. Okay, so dirt. Okay, get some dirt. Use that to cover. Minayin the rabbos zevel hadak. I don't know that you can even use fine dung. V'chol hadak, fine sand. V'shrikas avonim, v'shrikas charsis, and ground stones and ground pottery. V'naoris pishtan daka, or I think when you process flax and you dry it out, so there's these little flax flakes, I guess. Sounds like a breakfast cereal. You can use that for kisui adam. V'nasoris shel charoshin, or sawdust daka, that's very fine. V'sid v'charsis, and lime and pottery. Levena umegufa shekachan, a brick or a mud pottery seal that has been ground up. So how do we know that you can use these things as well? Tamalomer v'chiso, well, it says to cover it. I mean, it's not just specifically offer, not specifically dirt, but also v'chiso, to cover it. You could cover it with a broader category, with a broader definition than more than just dirt, but also these other items that we listed. Now, okay, so if you can use a broader categorization, so maybe even coarse dung and coarse sand, v'shrikas klei matecho. So what if you take metal vessels and grind up metal? Can you cover with that? Uleveno mugufa shelo kachan, or a brick or a mud seal that weren't ground up. V'kemach v'subin umursan, and fine flour and coarse flour and bran. Tamulomar be'offer. It says no. It needs to be dirt. Okay, fine. So we just had like a whole journey over there, right? We said v'chiso, just cover it. Maybe I could just cover it with a plate. No, but offer, you need dirt. Okay, maybe only dirt. No, because it says v'chiso, it's more than just only dirt. It's these other categorizations, but it's the fine categorizations, but not the coarse categorizations. Okay, why include the fine stuff and exclude the coarse stuff? So says the Gemara, because it's a riboy and a miut. Who wants to explain for us how riboys and miuts work as opposed to klal and prats? Basically, a klal ufrat means if you have a general rule followed by a specific rule, it would be only the specific rule. So for example, v'chiso, let's just say v'chiso means that you can cover it with anything, and be'offer means specifically dirt. So if it's klal ufrat, we would say it's only dirt. You can only cover with dirt. But we're saying it's a riboy and a miut. We're going to explain why in a second, why it's a riboy and a miut versus a klal ufrat. But klal ufrat would mean it's only dirt. You can only use dirt and that's it. Riboy and a miut means that riboy is that you can use anything. Miut limits the scope to things similar to the miut. So if we're saying v'chisao be'offer in dirt, so if you say riboy and miut, we're limiting the scope to those things that are similar to dirt, right? And we're talking about things that are groundly fine, like dirt, and things that can grow stuff, right? So I would say Riba akosov umiyet, that since the pasuk there was a riboy of the chiso covered and then a miut of offer, marba'ani es elu shein min offer. So I will include these, the finely ground stuff that are a type of offer, as Rashi says. Rashi says v'chol hanach kimlu l'rabbanan shemegadlin tzmachin. The rabbis assume that all these things, right, the fine dung and the fine pottery and all that fine stuff, you would be able to grow stuff in it. Okay. But I'll exclude all the coarse stuff, she'ein min offer, that they wouldn't be considered the type of offer, dirt. Okay, fine. So we say ribui umiut, and we're limiting the scope of what you can cover with to things that are similar to afar. And that includes all the fine stuff. Ema v'chiso klal offer prat. Maybe I'll say that it is not a ribui and miut, but rather a klal ufrat. Klal ufrat ein b'chlal ela masha b'frat. Offer in midachrin alo. And that would mean that, right, the way klal ufrat works, that when you have a general rule followed by a specific, it's limited only to the specific, and therefore you'd only be able to do kisei adam with offer. None of this other fine, fine dung or fine sand or all that stuff. Only dirt. So Rav Mari says, Rav Mari Mishum to have a klal hatzarich lefrat. As I mentioned earlier, the tzarich, the need part. I said we're going to get back to that. So this is very, very, very interesting. This is a scenario. It's very interesting because it doesn't come up often. Can anybody else remember any other time that this came up? Honestly, I can't. It could be it has, but I don't remember. Where's it? Apparently it comes up in Bechoros. We haven't learned Bechoros yet. Bechoros we're learning next. I'm going to have a shluck of coffee. We're going to talk about Klal Hatzarich Lefrat. Yeah, I feel like we haven't really discussed Klal Hatzarich Lefrat, but it's in Rabbi Shmuel Omer, right? Rabbi Shmuel Omer, B'shlos Esther Midas Atona Jasmine, Miklal Lefrat, Prat Uchlal, Klal Lefrat Uchlal. Uh-oh, now I'm stuck. Klal Lefrat, Klal Lefrat Uchlal. I don't know. Did we already get up to Iyat Hadon Ela Ke'ena Prat? Yeah, I think so. Klal Lefrat Uchlal, Iyat Hadon Ela Ke'ena Prat. Yeah, that sounds right. Now, I think right after that we get Klal Hatzarich Lefrat, Prat Hatzarich Leklal, right? Again, from the beginning. Rabbi Shmuel B'shlosim Dezem Mikav V'chom Gzer Shava Binav Mikasav V'chom Binav. Whoa, I totally skipped, right? Sheesh. Rabbi Shmuel B'shlosim Dezem Mikav V'chom Prat Uchlal, Klal V'chom Uchlal. Yeah. Oh wait, did I skip Gzer Shava Binav? I don't know. I clearly don't know what I'm talking about. Rabbi Shmuel B'shlosim Dezem Mikav V'chom Prat Uchlal, Klal V'chom Uchlal. Yeah, to don't look at him. Kal Shu Tzarich Lefrat. Prat Shu Tzarich Leklal. So there's Klal Shu Tzarich Lefrat and Prat Shu Tzarich Leklal. What are those things? We see it comes up in Bechoros. We haven't learned Bechoros yet. Anyways, so Omer of Mari Mishum Dava Klal Hatzarich Leprat. V'chol Klal Hatzarich Leprat ain't done and also B'chlal Ufrat. A Klal Hatzarich Lefrat is different than a Klal Uprat. As we said, Klal Uprat is limited only to the prat. So if it was Klal Uprat, it would be only dirt. That's it, nothing else, no fine sand or anything like that. But Klal Hatzarich Leprat, it seems that we are defining that essentially as a ribui and miut, and we are basically limiting the scope of what you can cover with to things that are similar to the prat, that are similar to dirt, all these other things like fine sand and fine dung and the mukufas achavis and that are ground up and things like that. So Klal Hatzarich Lefrat is basically essentially like a ribui and a miut, so it's not only dirt, but it's things similar to dirt. Now, great. What is a Klal Hatzarich Lefrat? How do we define that? That's an interesting question. It's kind of a machlokas Rashi and Tosfos shtickle, but I'm going to explain it like this. The way I understand Rashi, I think the easiest way to understand it is basically the Klal needs the prat. Why does the Klal need the prat? Well, because if it didn't have the prat, I would totally bark up the wrong tree. As we suggested, what was the first thing we suggested in the Gemara? The first thing we suggested in the Gemara was B'chiso yachol yichasenu ba'avonim or yichbe olav esakli. Talmud omer ba'afar. You see what just happened right there? If it only said B'chiso, I could think, what does it mean? take a plate, literally like put a lid on it, cover the dam, cover the blood, can't see it anymore, it's covered. You're done. If all I had was v'chiso and cover it, I would have taught, right, kisei adam, everyone knows kisei adam, you take dirt and you put the dirt, right? So Rabbeinu Tam explains, so without getting into whatever, but he says, because be'ofer, right, as we learned the other day, be'ofer means that the blood is in the dirt, that you have dirt below it, and the blood goes on that, and then more dirt on top of it, right? Kilu, so Rabbeinu Tam says that it's, without mixing, we don't have to get into Rabbeinu Tam right now, but I mentioned it because be'ofer. The point is, if we only had v'chiso, so I could think they literally just take a plate, cover the blood, can't see it anymore. We mamish need be'ofer to say, no, this is a dirt thing. That you take dirt and you cover it with dirt. So because this is a klal that really needs the prat. So, for example, what's like a classic example of klal ufrat? This is really klal ufrat uchlal. But whenever I think of klal ufrat uchlal, I always think of Meister Sheni, right? V'nasata, I don't remember that. I always forget the exact quote, but something like "V'nasata kesef b'chol ashetar v'nafshcha b'bakor v'tzon v'yanav v'sheicher," something like that. That you have this money for Meister Sheni. What do you do with it? Right. Well, you have fruits, whatever. But if you transfer its value onto money, you take the money to Yerushalayim, and it says you could spend the money in Yerushalayim. So I'd know what to do, Be'etzim. You take money, you buy stuff with it. I know what to do. It's not like I'd be barking completely up the wrong tree. But when we say Babakar Vatzon, we're saying, okay, we're kind of limiting the scope. We're saying, no, buy food. Don't buy things that aren't food. Don't buy random stuff. You spend it on food, on korbanos, whatever. So it's not like if I didn't have the prat there, I'd be barking completely up the wrong tree. No, I just wouldn't know exactly what to buy. But I would know that I'm spending money. Over here, like, we would have an entirely different idea of what kisei adam is without be'ofer. Once it has be'ofer, it's like, oh, this is a dirt thing. It's not just take a vessel and cover it and be done. So therefore, it's a klal hatzarich leprat. You really need the prat here in order to know b'chlal what the klal is talking about. And therefore, it's a klal hatzarich leprat. And because it's a klal hatzarich leprat, we say it's not. We don't treat it as a klal ufrat. Rather, we actually treat it as a ribui umiut, and therefore you can do kisei adam with anything similar to afar, anything similar to dirt, like finely ground sand. Darish of Nachman bar Rav Chizde says, Rav Nachman bar Rav Chizde, ein mechasim ela b'davar shezor in bo matzmiach. You can only do kisei adam with something that when you plant in it, it grows. And Rashi points out, specifically lim'ute eretz melecha. It's specifically coming to exclude salty, hard earth. Amarava I burcha. Says Rava, this is shtuyot. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak l'Rava. Says Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak to Rava, wait a second, why are you dismissing this? My burch said, what's so shtuyoti about this? Ana amrisa niale, I said this to Rav Nachman bar Rav Chizda. Ume'al masniso amrisa niale, and I said it based on the following brisa. Haymalech b'midbar, if a person is walking in the desert. Now, a desert is where you're going to have this hard, salty earth. Ve'ein lo offer lechasos, and you don't have any dirt. All you have is this deserty earth. You don't have any proper dirt that you can use for kisei adam. So shochek dinar zav, you could take a golden dinar, umechase, and grind up the golden dinar and cover with that. Now, we had said earlier you can't use metal vessels, but as we're going to see in a minute, this is specifically gold is based on Xeris HaKosum. If a person's on a boat, he doesn't have any dirt to do kisei adam, but he has animals that need kisei adam, sorev, or chickens, sorev taliso, so you could burn your garment, and do kisei adam with the ash of the garment. Sorry, if taliso mechase, I understand why we could suggest to just burn your garment and do kisei adam with that. Ashkechon efer, to create offer, because we have a precedent in the Torah, as we're going to see in a moment, where ash is referred to as offer, and therefore the kisei adam with offer, you can even use ash for it. Ela dinar zav minolan. How do you know that you can use a golden dinar? Amrib zera ve'afers zav lo, that a pasuk in Eov says, talks about the afar of gold, the dirt, the ground up gold. So we see that that ground up gold could be referred to as afar. So therefore, even though we said earlier that you can't grind up metal vessels and use that, but specifically gold can be ground up because the pasuk refers to ground up gold as afar. Okay, fine. So therefore, Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says to Rava that I said based on this brisa, right? He's in the desert. Why not just use the desert earth for kisei adam? Because that is hard, salty earth. You can't use that. And says Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak to Rava, that is why Rav Nachman bar Rav Chizda had said that you have to do kisei adam with things that what do you say? B'davar shezorim bo matzmiach, something that you could plant in and it will grow to the exclusion of hard, salty earth. According to Beis Shammai, you can only use dirt. And Beis Hillel says no, you can even use ash. By Parah Aduma it says that you'll take from the afar with an ayin, which is dirt, of the sreifas apara, which is really a reference to the ashes of the Parah Aduma. So because ash could also be written as dirt, so that's how we know that you can do kisei adam also with ash, according to Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai disagrees. They say afar sreifa ikre, afar stamala ikre. No, by the Parah Aduma, it's not afar, it's afar sreifa. That's different. But afar, when we talk about v'chisau, but afar, that's specifically afar. It is not. It's dirt. It's not ash. Tana osifa alein, and they added on to these items ashachor, charcoal, ve'akhol, like powder that's used for like cosmetics, ve'nikras pi sulin, that is, I don't remember, says Rashi, afar shemenakrim bo'a minarichayim, that when you clear out a millstone, any dust that comes or any dirt, powder that comes from the millstone, and finally, v'yeshom, some say ap azarnich, which is some kind of a pigment. You can do kisei adam with that. Friends, that was Daf Peiches of Masechta Chullin. On Daf Peiches of Masechta Chullin, we wrapped up the previous Mishnah with which blood needs to be covered. The Chacham say all blood. Rabbi Yehuda says some blood. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says the soul blood, the dama nefesh. And then we got to a new Mishnah where we discussed what to use for kisei adam, essentially dirt and things that are similar to dirt. We said specifically things that plants can grow in. That was the Peiches of Masechta Chullin. Hope you enjoyed. Cheers.